Okay, today we're going to look at the ancient civilization that created Great Zimbabwe. Not necessarily the people that are living there now, but the people that had created it in antiquity. This article here shows you English Bantus said that ancient white people called the Maiti built the civilization of Zimbabwe. Now, Maiti could have something to do with the Medes and those type of people that were there, but it could have other connotations. It has very much a Castilian or castle type build to it, and the stonework is somewhat impeccable, and you can't find that anywhere in West Africa where these Bantus came from that had expanded out and ran into this area. Whenever you ask them, though, not other people, not people who are saying that black people built it, but you ask the people themselves living there, they tell you that white people called Maiti built this place. So let's look into this. Now, where we're looking at is Greater Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is the brown one right here, stuck in the center. And right in the very center of it is Great Zimbabwe. Now, we found down here, right near Cape Town, we found the site that I showed you recently that dates right to 100,000 BC, showing red ochre burials from Cro-Magnon pre-Neanderthal intervention that showed up in this area just about where my pointer is. And then also right up here about the end of my pointer we have the Hofmeyer site, which also dates to between 32 and 40,000 BC and shows Caucasian skulls are also here at this time. Indeed, all the way through this right hand or eastern side up through the Horn shows Caucasian intervention from ancient times. And it's because of this that they had the idea of the out of Africa theory, that it wasn't actually a going back in and a coming back out, but this must have been it. Now we realize that that wasn't it, and it was a coming back in and going back out. And the Eastern African Negroid people there have a large amount of Caucasian admix from these events. And what we know as Ethiopians and the Sudanese and people like that don't show it as much, and you get a little away from it, and they're just basic Negroids and don't have very much admix. They do it at the top part of North Africa, but that's also due to Islamic slave trade, and indeed some of the Eastern African is from that admix that had happened during then. By the way, Adolf Hitler had an idea to give Madagascar to the Jewish people and to put them there, that was his answer. But we won't go there, but if you'd like to see an article on that, here it is. This guy says, I've been there. I've seen it both from the ground and from the air in the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. And where they are is right here. And there's another spot that's up here near Harare, but not near as intricate, and of course not a building, but it's from a great stonework, something like Ayers Rock or smaller, something like Enchanted Rock or one of those places I've shown you here recently. And when you look out from this place, you can tell it's a structure that's built very much castle-ish, very much a Castilian, a castle-ish type build. There's rotundas and round things in there and stand-ups and stuff, and there's some signs of metalwork and some slag and things like that done. Here's an ancient depiction of what looks like a fish eagle, a type of eagle. And this zigzag form that you see here follows the people that actually built this thing. That this architectural arches, if you will, holding up weight, was a structural thing, but also a thing of beauty. When you look at the Great Wall here of Zimbabwe, the biggest outer wall that they have, the most incredible part of the structure itself, you can see along the top this same venting, this same concept. And it really is arches built over plates, built over arches over plates. You can also imagine, you can see that by doing this, you can get a lot more vaulting out of the same amount of rock, that if they were flattened down would only be half that size in this area. So it's a way of giving some vaulting, but it's also a way of holding pressures, arches, and things like that. And again, it's also an architectural beauty point. Now, from the inside, you look at it, and it's got structures built around onto it that are quite massive. There is, again, signs of granary holes and things like that. The opening of the door here, again, shows something very Castilian. And the opening here, amazing. It's about 16 foot across right here and does not have an archway holding it up. It's able to hold itself up with just the lintel it has available right there. I think that's quite neat. And you can see the entranceway here now. It's been done and adorned, even though the inside is not flattened out or done. Now, not only are there ruins in Rhodesia, there are lesser ruins, canals, diversion dams, and irrigation schemes throughout the country and leading into other countries before the boundaries were set that currently are there. I don't know if you've seen my one about 2.5 years ago now, almost 3, about all the rings that are in Africa that are there from antiquity that look like they use the same type of stonework. And their kraals are like cattle kraals. They don't have openings or entrances like these. And they have the stonework that looks very similar to this there. This also was claimed by the locals to have been there before they got there, that this is not something that they had done. When you ask what they were for, they give you conflicting ideas. It's well proven that civilizations possess unique building techniques, symbols, and artistic expressions. Each one of these can be used to show continuity, but also to show where knowledge is given. You can see that people did not have the wheel or the chariot in Egypt until it was brought by the Hyksos, and you see it definitely enamored by them and brought into their society and shown from then on. And so this is a giving or an imparting of knowledge. Other times we look at things like this, and it's really more of a continuity where you can say these people went here, these people went here, this is where they came from because they had that over here, and so on. So you have to look at things like that. They carry out these cultural attributes to distant areas as they migrate. I think that scholars should be able to determine the origin of the ruins by comparing the rock-laying techniques that are there in Rhodesia to other ancient structures, and indeed you can by that simplistic thing that I showed you in the Castle Rotunding. There's one thing about all this that sticks in his mind. I'm not going to try to track down the proper spelling of these places, but here's my observation. The Rhodesian light infantry had a training camp at a place known as Surtik. This area was on the Mazo farming estate, which covered tens of thousands of hectares of land. One train feature was a mountain called Damshashawa, right? Dambashawa? That's it, Dambashawa. I'm not going to try either, people. But there's neat things shown there. This right here is a water collection pool that's up there, that's up in the mountains, and that's where you would get more rain at. It rains over this mountain more and runs off. There are creeklets running off of it. But then you can see this stone that's set up here, and it looks like it's there for a reason. A map of the country of Zimbabwe with Dambashawa represented as a black dot northeast of Harare. So again, we have down here, Greater Zimbabwe, and then up here, this other side, not too far away. And the crawls start right down in the bottom part of this area. There are national parks now. There's Francistown here, which is substantiated by Caucasians also, and then near the lake set here that separates it from the Kalahari Reserve. And so you see this place here, and it has that Ayers Rock look, or that giant escarpment type of look, a projection. And you can see that you can easily walk right up through here and walk right up onto the top and then go over here and do things. There's a few places. We use the cliff faces as a training area for rock climbing and mountain operations. About 400 meters up the trail from the bottom of Dambashawa is a ledge, and on the rock behind the ledge is a cliff painting. The painting has been carbon dated to be in excess of 2,500 years old. It depicts the usual animals of the area, but the main character is a man wearing boots, it seems, and a helmet, and carrying a rifle with a sling, or a spear with an atlatl attached with a sling or a piece of leather to it. The painting is perfectly clear and nothing is left to imagine, though. He's got a selfie of it standing in front of it, and I'd like to see that picture right now, but I won't go there. These are the pictures of the ruins here. Map with dots indicating Dashama, Northeast Harare, Greater Zimbabwe to the west. So you can see here we have that. Now, not too far from here, we go into South Johannesburg and the area of Pretoria and so on. And again, down there close to Bloemfontein is where we have the Hofmeyer site. And right here on the loop of the G of Google is where you'll find the site at Blomberg Caves that both show Caucasians and the red ochre that we had talked about in a couple of other videos from there. Now, then we have Lake Malawi leading into Tanganyika, up through Burundi, then Victoria, and then that starts out the Nile. And so that's kind of the origin or starting of the Nile. And he wants to tell you pathetic or Jew-obedient Western liberals came to the Bantu, native blacks had built this Great Zimbabwe and various irrigation systems, or that the Arabs possibly part of the slave trading infrastructure. But the Bantus themselves deny this. They say that ancient white people did it, and they were called the Maati. There's been books written about this. The Origin of Zimbabwe's Situation by R. Gare is showing it. And here shows you what it is. It's kind of the ringlet, and you can see the little cattle kraals around it that look very similar to the ones that you find south of this. The difference is it has a great wall to it. And the wall, instead of just being this tall, as the ground slopes down over in this area, becomes higher and bigger and bigger and bigger all the way around. There are trees in there now giving shade, but there's no indication there were trees in antiquity. If there were, they were taken out and away, and these have all grown much, much later. Now, that book there arose out of a discussion that he had with Major Leyland and the publisher during a visit to Rhodesia. He had worked on the subject for a number of years, frequently visited the ruins, and knew well many of the Bantu people involved. I am indebted to Major Leland for his assistance where I've been able to make use of it. This book has been undertaken to present what I consider to be the most rational and scientific interpretation of the evidence produced by the phenomena associated with the megalithic ruins of Rhodesia, which Great Zimbabwe. And it's not megalithic stonework, it's megalithic work out of small stone, but it's still megalithic stonework, but it's not like using giant stones the size of Egypt, or like the gigantic megalithic stones like in Baalbek or anything along that line. Natale Dodo and the Terraces of Ngala. Now this is this book cover that's shown here. It's by Robert Soper. With Mapungubwe in the Transvaal are the best known examples. I have not thought it necessary to set out a detailed description of these sites in the body of text, that there is ample literature dealing with them. There are some short descriptions written by Major Leland in an appendix for the benefit of those who have not ready access to the existing literature on the subject, where he describes certain areas and walkways and things like that. My purpose has been to interpret certain facts of archaeology and to make a synthesis of them with those of anthropology, and particularly ethnology, comparative religion, geographic communications, and distributions. The whole subject of non-Negroid influence in East and Southern Africa before the coming of the Bantu is a very wide one. The evidence to be culled from rock paintings and engravings alone is something of the greatest importance in this respect. I have, however, rigorously confined myself to the civilization alone. In this I have found myself on the side of Professors Keene, Dart, and Galloway, and the other distinguished scholars who have been forced by the sheer weight of facts to reject a Bantu origin for Greater Zimbabwe. I have not, however, in reluctant pursuing of the task of showing how impossible the Proto-Bantu concept is, felt it necessary to present an historic ethnology of southern Africa. What is so astonishing to that fact, faced with a huge complex of irrigation terraces at Inyaga and the size of those megalithic sites, which obviously required someone such as an archaeological or agricultural organization to feed their inhabitants, they would have taken too many people. It would have had been an agricultural society that would have been able to pull this off, just like you see at Göbekli Tepe and other places. It takes a agronomic society. They have to start developing writing and things like that to be able to pull off things like this, and the Bantus did not have that, or they show no evidence of it back before where they came down the road. So this, where they ended up, can't be their creation. Anyone should have irresponsibility plunged into the development of a theory of independent Bantu evolution on this civilization. It is completely out of character of the Bantu and is no justification from other Negroid parts of Africa, past or present. Irrigation is limited to the Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Amerindian peoples. The Negroes never have possessed the technical knowledge nor expanded labor in such massive enterprises of irrigation. Irrigation is a characteristic of ancient Egypt, Arabia, Abyssinia, Mesopotamia, Sumeria, and the Indus Valley civilizations of Iran, Turkestan, Syria, and the Mediterranean countries of Malaysia, Indochina, China, and the Mesoamerican civilizations. They made terraces, they created places and irrigation and such, utilizing floods and so on. Of course, there aren't really a lot of floods and rains to use in a correct way here. They would have to use it off of riverways and things, and they did not. In the face of such facts, sufficient warning was provided for those who have sought to deny the obvious and create this Bantu myth that they had made it. It's a myth which was not created by the Bantu themselves, who have never made such claims, but it's the work of modern European writers. Someone's got their hand in on this concept they won't let go. Indeed, Mutwa, a Zulu, who has written 2 large works on the traditions of the Bantu, categorically states his people were not responsible for this civilization, which he attributes to a white people he calls the Mati. It is my view that the case presented is unanswerable insofar as it destroys the concept that this civilization is due to the Bantu people, or the primitive Africans. Whether I have correctly identified those to whom the civilization is to be attributed may well be arguable, as there are so many peoples involved. And this is by Dr. Gare back in 1970. They go on to talk about the tragedies in South Africa, but we're not going to discuss that today. But Greater Zimbabwe, a beautiful site and quite incredible, but not something that you can really attribute to the Negroids that are currently living in the area. From the time here to the time now, they haven't built anything that looks like this, or even attempt, even after seeing the actual example of someone else's work, aren't doing anything like this, and neither are West Africans. And they never did. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. Enjoy. Have a great day.